I think my mom did a pretty sweet job with my costume.
This review is brought to you by Netflix. Alright, so after a year of delays and like 5 or 6 different years of development, South Park: The Stick of Truth now actually exists, as in it's a real physical thing that you can go into a store and buy. Now that it's here, I reckon more than a few of you want to know how it turned out, and I can answer that for you. So yeah, here's my review.
You, huh? So I guess we'll never really be friends.
South Park: The Stick of Truth is a crazy idea for a video game. A big-budget, open-world, turn-based RPG is kind of the last thing you'd anticipate from a show whose last 3 games were a kart racer, a platformer, and a tower defense game. Then again, that's kind of exactly what's so cool about it. It's a strange, risky, exciting premise, especially with storied RPG developer Obsidian Entertainment at the helm. So, did they succeed? In a lot of important ways, yeah, they did.
Standing down!
Stick of Truth places you in the shoes of the new kid, a 4th grader with a shadowy past who just moved to town. After customizing pretty much everything about your character except for the gender, you're thrown into an already in progress fantasy role-playing session with all the kids of South Park. From there, the game opens up, giving you access to a grip of ultra-bizarre quests and side quests, from trying to fit in with the goth kids who hang out behind the school, to venturing into an 8-bit version of Canada, to a UFO abduction. The variety is stunning, and it's one of the best parts of Stick of Truth. The things you're doing in the game are never not ridiculous, and if you're like me, you're gonna have frequent moments of disbelief at what's actually going on in front of you. This is a game where you go inside of a butt and then fart inside that butt, and that is the least weird thing you do in that butt. It's unbelievable. It feels weird to fawn over the graphics of a South Park game, but the simple, straightforward art style belies the insane amount of detail on display here. Everything looks, sounds, and animates precisely the way it does on the show. This is exactly what a South Park game should look like. But still, a game like this lives or dies on one question: is it funny? Well, that depends. How do you feel about South Park? Written primarily by showrunners Matt Stone and Trey Parker, the script is utterly, unapologetically South Park.
So, you are the new kid. Your coming was foretold by Coldwell Banker.
Sure, the main story missions tend to be a bit funnier than the side quests, but for the most part, the exact voice of South Park is on display here all the way through. If anything, Stick of Truth might be more South Park than South Park itself. Freed from the constraints of television, the game is far more vulgar than the show could ever be. Depending on your region, this is a fully uncensored product, not just the language, but the nudity, violence, and all of it, to the point that it's hard to believe it got made at all. For me personally, the game was at its strongest when it set its comedic sights on video game tropes. From the silent amnesiac protagonist to jokes at the expense of zombie fatigue and audio logs, the game's best material is consistently the stuff where it's making fun of games.
A woman trapped on this ship left an audio log about some papers she had left in an alien cabinet, and she told me the code was 776. That was kind of cool because I didn't know the code before that. Though when I opened the cabinet, there was only some kind of power-up I didn't really need.
Comedically, where it falters a bit is how often you'll end up hearing the same joke multiple times. Nothing breaks immersion quite like hearing the same line 2 or 3 times, and the effect is magnified when it's a punchline.
Don't talk to her, she's not part of the game. Don't talk to her, she's not part of the game.
Recent games like Bastion have done an excellent job of eliminating the issue of redundant dialogue, and South Park is probably the best case for why. There's tons of material here, but while fishing for it, you're gonna hear a lot of the same lines over and over.
We're gonna send you straight to heck!
The most striking aspect of Stick of Truth might be the way it goes after actual, specific, real-world targets. Al Gore, Taco Bell, the iPhone. Just like the show, they lean hard on fair use, and the result is unlike anything I've ever seen in a game before. Like, the in-game quest log is actually called Facebook. Not LifeJournal or MyPlace or some other parody name, it's literally just Facebook. It's one of 1,000 examples of the no-compromises approach they took to making this game, and the result is an incredible accomplishment.
Thank you for thy message, traveler. I shall make haste to Koopa Keep. Mom, can you drive me to Eric's house?
All of this is just a long way of saying that from the South Park end of things, they did it. The South Park elements of Stick of Truth absolutely hold up to their end of the bargain. This has to be the closest to unscathed any cartoon has ever been in getting the video game treatment. The entire town of South Park is open and available to you here, and the volume of jokes and references is insane. Practically every single South Park character makes an appearance, and every square inch of the game is crammed with tiny jokes. The junk category in your inventory might as well just be a list of every noun to ever make an appearance on the show. Their commitment to making this the ultimate South Park game borders on the obsessive, and the whole thing just feels like a giant love letter to fans of the show.
Guard the Stick of Truth while we defend the fortress! Aye, aye! Aye, aye! We're not playing pirates, Clyde!
Unfortunately, it's the video game part where South Park begins losing me a bit. First, the good. No one is going to accuse Obsidian of watering down their RPG roots with this game. Stick of Truth is a remarkably hardcore role-playing game. It's loaded with equipment, status effects, perks, special abilities, and everything else you can imagine. Which would be fine if the game didn't do such a poor job of explaining itself.
He doesn't remember.
He doesn't remember at all.
That's good he doesn't remember.
The tutorial, while pretty funny, doesn't do an awesome job of explaining the fundamentals. There are tons of aspects of the combat, from the combo system to the nuances of various status effects, that the game makes no attempt to explain. So many crucial details about the RPG gameplay are relegated to the in-game manual, a daunting, pictureless wall of text that most players will probably never bother to read.
I hereby dub thee Sir Douchebag. Congratulations.
And to me, that's South Park's biggest failing. 4 or 5 hours into the game, I was still learning essential things about the combat from the load screen tooltips. It's weird, right? Because ostensibly this game is meant for all South Park fans, and it's worrying to me that as a lifelong player of games, I found myself regularly frustrated by how often the game simply failed to tell me how exactly things work. On top of that, the combat just never feels great. Obsidian opted to build a turn-based RPG with a Paper Mario-style timing-based battle system, but it's pulled off with a fraction of the elegance you see in the Mario RPGs. There's an irritating lack of feedback for your input throughout the entire game. The meat of this game ultimately is the combat, and you're going to spend a lot of that combat squinting at the screen looking for the next gray circle or sword glint indicating it's time to hit a button. Likewise, the timing window for blocks varies wildly. Some attacks even require you to mash randomly on the face buttons, but give you no on-screen indication that anything's working. The interface is also a pain. The game lacks any way to sort the hundreds of equipable items you'll acquire, which is something that, needless to say, is essential in an RPG. The map, frankly, is awful, never showing you more than a small sliver of the game world at a time, and its only 2 zoom levels are basically way too close and even closer. It's also technically pretty rough in some spots. The seams show a bit more often than you might be used to from a full-fledged retail game. Thrown items randomly won't work, characters will get stuck and slide around the screen, aiming projectiles is impossible, for example when standing next to a ladder. They're small gripes, but it all leads to the game feeling a lot cheaper than it ought to, which is especially disappointing in light of all the obvious care and attention that went into the actual content. In a lot of ways, Stick of Truth just kind of feels like a bummer. It seems like there could have been an opportunity here to make a deep, strategic RPG that was also at least somewhat intuitive. In short, Stick of Truth turns out to be a lot more fun to watch than it is to actually play. It's a game that somehow executes on its totally insane, extremely specific premise, but tragically, it still stumbles far too often at actually being fun. South Park: The Stick of Truth gets a 3 out of 5. So yeah, that's what I thought. It's complicated, right? I think this game is potentially going to make a lot of specific people extremely happy, but I'd also feel weird recommending it without a bunch of asterisks. I should probably also mention that I played the PC version, which ran really smoothly, but I can't speak to the performance of the last-gen console version, so proceed with caution on that front. But yeah, I'll be hanging out in the comments below, so if you have any questions, I'll see you down there. In the meantime though, let's take a word from our sponsor, Netflix. With Netflix, you can stream TV episodes and movies directly to your home, saving you time, money, and hassle. It's also the only place to watch exclusive shows like House of Cards and Orange is the New Black. Best of all, you can get a free trial membership and support Rev3 Games by signing up at netflix.com/Rev3Games.